What's up, guys? Welcome back to Source University. Today we have a video discussing the Charlie Kirk shooting. So I've compiled every piece of evidence in the case. Let's jump right into it. We're going to be covering pre-content for post-context, the official timeline and narrative, evidence collected and analyzed, narrative changes and issues, extra information, questions and concerns, along with theories circulating online, and a conclusion that we're brought to. A little bit of context before the shooting. So Charlie was pro-Israel, however, he was also pro-truth. So he has said some things within the past year or two that people have claimed could have influenced the Israeli government or intelligence agencies like Mossad to take him out. Now, according to Candace Owens and others, his stance on Israel was not only changing, but had already changed. In the letter released by Benjamin Netanyahu, Charlie explained in his own words how if he didn't entirely defend Israel, people would call him an anti-Semite, and when he does defend her, he is labeled a paid apologist. Here's that exact quote from the second page in the letter released by Benjamin Netanyahu. I'm not going to dive too deep into that letter, but I did think it was relevant enough to bring up in the video. So, October 12th, 2023, we have a YouTube video where Charlie was discussing Israel supposedly ethnically cleansing Gaza and how there might be more to the story on Patrick Bet-David's podcast. We'll take a look at that clip now.
And by the way, I'm actually very pro-Israel. So let me be very, so I'm not exactly.
Well, I think we all are.
No, I just want to make sure my position is clear here. But so Patrick, there are other explanations. It's possible that the Netanyahu government was double-crossed by bad agents. Okay? That's dark, but it's not as dark as what we're talking about. Okay? Another aspect is that Netanyahu might have traitors in his government, like legitimate traitors that have infiltrated. I was texting with some senior people in the IDF, and they said, Charlie, can't say too much, but let's just say the same problem you have with the left in America we have here in Israel. So there's something to think about. Just something to think about, right? Is that maybe there's some people within those intel agencies that aren't as sympathetic. Or maybe, Patrick, maybe they might have gotten a tip, they might have gotten whispers, but no one thought it would be 1,200 Jews dead. That's a potential, right? Because here's the essence of it. The essence is this. This is the closest thing to the Holocaust that any of us have lived through. But the fact is now Bibi and the Israeli hard right government has a mandate. I got to be careful the way I say this. They're going to try to ethnically cleanse Gaza.
Yep.
I mean, I don't use that term lightly, okay? They're talking about basically removing 2.5 million people from there, okay? And honestly, they have a mandate to go seek justice and revenge. They do. This idea that they need to have a truce or a peace treaty, that's morally crap after you see women and children be burned alive and dragged to the streets. But there are some serious questions here, Patrick. And let me tell you, my pattern recognition over the last 5 years has become pretty sharp. COVID, Maui fires, Epstein. When I see a story and it doesn't click, our guts are usually right.
Yeah, this one's very weird.
Moving on to January 2024, we have a clip from the Charlie Kirk show where Charlie was discussing Robert Maxwell being an Israeli intelligence asset and Epstein as a key player in a multi-decade blackmail operation. Here's that clip.
That Epstein, with his little friend Ghislaine and Ghislaine's father, Robert Maxwell, who was obviously a spy of the Israeli intelligence agencies, but there was something else going on here. Epstein was not some sort of whiz-kid hedge fund manager. Epstein was playing a part. Epstein was a LARPer. Epstein was cast for a specific role, and he played it really well. The sweatpants and the Harvard jacket, the kind of disheveled hair, looking as if he was so smart and above the clouds that he was doing advanced mathematic equations on the back of napkins. But if you actually go into some of the videos of people that met with Epstein at the time, they said he was awfully unimpressive when it came to finance and markets and economics. It's nothing new that if you're in the intel agencies, you want to try and get as much blackmail on powerful people as possible. Easy, not hard. And this is no longer just speculation. First of all, the evidence that shows that Epstein was a creation of either Mossad, Israeli intelligence, American intelligence, Saudi intelligence, or maybe he was just a hired gun. Maybe he was just the guy that countries would go to and park a couple $100 million and say, hey, can you get one of the members of the royal family with a 13-year-old so we can get them to do what we want to do? Members of Congress are actively being blackmailed. The Epstein playbook is being used on a daily basis. Jeffrey Epstein was not a financier. He was not a hedge fund manager. Jeffrey Epstein was a key player in a multi-decade blackmail operation against the most powerful people on the planet.
Moving on to May 29th, we see Charlie Kirk advocating for the release of the Epstein files at a TPUSA event. He essentially wanted to have every file in the Epstein case easily accessible on a public website. Here's that clip.
What's your opinion on the Phase 1 release of the Epstein files? Do you think it was more of a PR stunt with Pam Bondi because she just got into office? And do you think it was right for her to call out on Kash Patel? What do you think is actually going on? And do you think that she genuinely has the files or people are destroying them? And what's going on there?
Well, I think they got to make this right. I mean,
Right.
we as the American people deserve to have every Epstein file released with no redactions whatsoever, period.
right.
And so yesterday, I don't want to comment because a lot of these people are my friends, but they got to make it right. And we, the American people, ran on transparency. We deserve to see the entire client list.
Yeah.
Every document the government has regarding the Epstein files, we, the American people, should have on an easy-to-access website immediately in a very, very quick fashion. I'm pushing for that both privately and publicly, just so you know.
Yeah.
Secondly, there probably are a lot of destroyed documents. I think that's probably the issue.
What do you think the implications will be on people? Let's say if they're found in government. Let's say if, for whatever reason, somebody in who we know as to be a normal person is caught on one of those files. Like, let's say Trump is he's not on the client list, but he's on the flight logs, right? So let's say something like that happens, but they find somebody else on the client list. What do you think the implications are, and what do you think Trump will do about that specifically?
Well, okay, so I can say with almost 100% certainty that Trump was not on the flight logs. But as far as the client list, that very specific thing, I don't know if it still exists. I'm worried that was actually deleted, destroyed, or disappeared. But look, statute of limitations for child sex trafficking goes for 30 or 40 years. We should impanel a grand jury, and every person involved in the Epstein child sex trafficking should go to federal prison for the rest of their life. Every single person. We need justice, and we need these people in federal jail.
Now moving on to July 12th, 2025, we're getting closer to the shooting date. Charlie was discussing whether Epstein was an intelligence asset for MI6, Saudi, or Mossad with Megyn Kelly. Here's that clip.
I am convinced, based on my own sources and my own reporting on this story, he wasn't one of ours.
So he was an American, which leads basically three options: MI6, Saudi, or Mossad.
Yep.
Which one would you choose?
I guess Mossad, given his connection to Ghislaine Maxwell.
So what does that mean?
Well, I mean, it's possible that that's the reason everything's getting buried, that there is some treasure trove.
How many people here believe that? Raise your hand. Okay, I'd say about half the hands think that it's being buried because of an Israeli thing. Alexander Acosta in 2007, he said he was told to treat Epstein carefully because he was an intel asset.
Well, and let me tell you the consequences of that. His subpoena, his search warrant on Jeffrey Epstein's residence was very narrow. It was not the kind of like, let's get everything. Let's see everything inside this guy's, dressers and so on. It was very, very narrowly tailored. And to this day, that's what the FBI is stuck with.
All right, getting right into it. So Charlie had posted at least 12 videos about Epstein within the past 2 months as I'm making this. Now, Jeffrey Epstein himself, despite being a high-profile prisoner in one of the most secure facilities in the United States, died under mysterious circumstances that many consider suspicious. Charlie Kirk, in the months before his assassination, had become increasingly vocal about Epstein, including the network of power surrounding him and the intelligence connections through figures like Robert Maxwell, not to mention his changing stance on Israel. So history shows that people who expose or even begin to expose powerful blackmail operations sometimes meet untimely deaths, from whistleblowers to journalists. And in that context, it's not unreasonable to ask whether Charlie Kirk's assassination could be connected to the same powerful interests who allegedly protected and later silenced Epstein. Now, this doesn't prove anything, but the pattern of high-profile individuals linked to Epstein dying suddenly or being silenced is real enough to merit investigation. We know Jeffrey Epstein had foreign intelligence connections, possibly CIA or even Mossad, like Mossad ties via Robert Maxwell and others, like the Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak, even CIA involvement via some of those connections. Now, if you want to know more about this stuff specifically, I recommend reading Whitney Webb's books, A Nation Under Blackmail, Volumes 1 and 2, some of the best journalism we have on the Epstein case itself. Now, moving on to a tweet from Harrison H. Smith, basically replying to a video of Ian Carroll reacting to Nick Fuentes claiming that Charlie Kirk was scared of debating him. He basically said, "I'm not going to name names, but I was told by someone close to Charlie Kirk that Charlie thinks Israel will kill him if he turns against them." It's an interesting claim about a month before the assassination took place. So we actually just got new chat logs leaked by Candace Owens where Charlie Kirk was discussing Jewish donors pulling out of TPUSA because he wasn't canceling Tucker Carlson and whatnot. Take a look.
This is an actual group chat, which happened 2 days before Charlie Kirk was assassinated. There were 9 people in total on this chat, including Charlie. Take a look. So Charlie writes in this group chat, just lost another huge Jewish donor, $2 million a year because we won't cancel Tucker. I'm thinking of inviting Candace. Somebody writes, ugh. Charlie writes, Jewish donors play into all of the stereotypes. I cannot and will not be bullied like this, leaving me no choice but to leave the pro-Israel cause.
Now moving on to September 8th, which is 2 days before the assassination, Jezebel published a post titled, "We paid some Etsy wishes to curse Charlie Kirk." The author described commissioning multiple curses via Etsy, like make everyone hate him or a powerful hex spell. Later altered and deleted the article after the shooting. This is a quote from the author. "I want to make it clear I'm not calling on dark forces to cause him harm. I just want him to wake up every morning with an inexplicable zit. I want his podcast mic to malfunction every time he hits record. I want his blue blazers to suddenly be one size too small. I want one of his socks to always be sliding down his foot. I want his thumb to grow too big to tweet. To ruin his day with collective feminist power of the Etsy coven would be my life's greatest joy." This is supposedly a satirical article that was released. People have made connections to Jezebel being the Queen of Israel, which is another interesting coincidence, I think. Moving on to September 9th, there's a YouTube video where Charlie Kirk spoke with Ben Shapiro, suggesting that we shouldn't believe everything in the news about Israel. And in this video itself, he even makes the joke that the Jews own the media. Here's that clip.
And one thing a friend said to me, interestingly, which is, okay, Charlie, we've pushed back against the media on COVID, on lockdowns, on Ukraine, on the border, on, so like maybe we should also ask a question. Is the media totally presenting the truth when it comes to Israel? Just a question, that maybe we shouldn't believe everything the media says, because I know I've been conditioned to ask a lot more critical questions over the last couple of years. People would accuse Israel of wanting to ethnically cleanse. Some people in the Israeli government are saying, again, it's all over the place, right? You have opinions all over. In your opinion, what would a good outcome 5 years from now be, and how does one respond to the claims of ethnic cleansing?
So ethnic cleansing, the idea, presumably, that population movement is equivalent to ethnic cleansing. I think ethnic cleansing is a term that's been fairly recently coined to describe population movement during war. And the reality is that's been ongoing for literally all of human history. The idea that Israel is, quote unquote, forcing people out of the Gaza Strip, that is not the stated policy of the Israeli government. The idea is if people want to leave, they can, but they're not being forced to leave. Again, moving people out of heavily urbanized areas that are honeycombed with terrorist booby traps pretty much everywhere is not the same thing as, quote unquote, ethnic cleansing. And I think that ethnic cleansing is very often used as sort of a softer form of the genocide attack. The idea being that Israel is trying to kill everyone, which of course is not true. As far as your earlier question about what we believe from the media, one of the things that I find kind of astonishing in some of the folks on the right who are highly critical of Israel is actually the lack of the lack of skepticism when it comes to legacy media. Legacy media are radically anti-Israel overall. The New York Times can certainly not be accused of being a pro-Israel outlet. It'd be very difficult to make the accusation that the Associated Press, which has worked hand in glove with Hamas for years, or Reuters, that these are wildly pro-Israel outlets. And yet, when it comes to the reporting, it seems to be sort of the opposite.
Ben,
so the Ben, perception the legacy media is like owned by the Jews. And
I was going to say, Ben, come
on.
You Jews own the media, Ben. So, I mean, come on. As you could tell by all the wonderful headlines you guys get.
Well, I mean, dude, the accusation that we own the media has not prevented, the Daily Wire from employing people who radically disagree with me on all of these matters. I mean, I don't agree with Matt Walsh on foreign policy. Matt obviously is a major host over at Daily Wire, and that's just my shop. And I'm overtly pro-Israel. Right? I mean, I'm not making any bones about this. I'm a Jew and I'm a Zionist. I'm not going to pretend that to say otherwise would be absolutely silly. To suggest that some sort of atheistic Jewish person by birth who does not care about Judaism or Israel owning the New York Times means the New York Times is pro-Israel is to ignore literally every bit of coverage they have ever done for my entire life.
Continuing on, there's a video from September 10th, the day of the shooting, from Life is Driving on YouTube, where they basically live streamed the whole event before, during, and after the shooting. So the link in the description of this YouTube video will have this Google Doc, so you can basically watch all of those videos via the Google Doc. Moving on to the timeline itself. So September 10th, 2025, this is the day of the shooting. At 8:07 a.m., TMZ footage shows a man wearing a maroon t-shirt that is walking through a neighborhood by the university, and this is presumably Tyler Robinson. At 8:23 a.m., Robinson's gray Dodge Challenger is seen driving past a house near the UVU campus area. 8:29 a.m., Governor Cox said Tyler Robinson drove a gray Dodge Challenger that arrived at UVU campus in a plain maroon t-shirt, light-colored shorts, and a black hat with a white logo and light-colored shoes.
Investigators reviewed additional video footage from UVU surveillance and identified Robinson arriving on UVU campus in a gray Dodge Challenger at approximately 8:29 a.m. on September 10th, in which he is observed on video in a plain maroon t-shirt, light-colored shorts, a black hat with a white logo, and light-colored shoes.
9:57 a.m., Robinson is seen walking back through a nearby neighborhood in his initial outfit, which means he stayed on campus for around an hour and a half.
So some brand new footage has just been released, allegedly showing the suspect Tyler Robinson at 11:45 a.m. on the morning of September 10th. Now, what's important about this video is this mysterious vehicle. That's coming up very shortly. But here we have the suspect walking downhill. He's got the backpack, a slight limp. Of course, he's able to move a bit more freely. He's walking downhill. That's quite natural. He's picking up a bit of pace. But when he reaches the intersection, he seems to stop. Take a look at this. So he reaches this white pole. And then alongside comes this vehicle. It seems to slow right down by the suspect, pull into the side, and then drive off. Now, is that a mere coincidence? Is it connected somehow to this suspect? The suspect at this time is still behind that pole. He seems to then check his phone and continue his walk. Now, as I say, this was recorded at 11:45 on the morning of September 10th. Just around the corner, we have that very famous footage of this individual limping across the road right by the university campus car park. So the timings match up here. This most likely is indeed the suspect concerned in the Charlie Kirk assassination. But is this vehicle connected?
Later returning at 11:49 a.m. via TMZ footage of the shooter walking on a doorbell camera in a different outfit. At 11:50 a.m., Robinson crosses a grassy area into a parking lot adjacent to the campus. At 11:51 a.m., the indictment says he arrived on campus from the north in a black t-shirt with an American flag in its center, a dark baseball cap, and large sunglasses, walking with a slight limp and very little bending of his right leg, consistent with a rifle being hidden in his pants. 12:02 p.m., the suspect is recorded walking on the north side of the Losi Center building through a set of doors on the southeast corner. 12:09 p.m., Charlie Kirk arrived on UVU campus, and 12:15 p.m., the indictment says Tyler Robinson crossed a railing from a public walkway and dropped onto the roof and appeared to crouch down on the north side of the wall on the rooftop, according to video surveillance. 12:22 p.m., the suspect stood up and started running across the rooftop of the Losi Center building toward the west side of the rooftop and appeared to scoot or army crawl along the rooftop area as he got closer to the edge of the rooftop until in a full prone shooting position. 12:23 p.m., Charlie Kirk is shot, ironically discussing gun violence. 12:23 p.m., crowd footage shows a person on the roof immediately running after the shot is taken, which would indicate that they had no time to disassemble the weapon, as per the official narrative. 12:23 p.m., the indictment says a camera caught the suspect running across the roof after the shot was fired and jumping down, proceeding to run toward the northeast end of campus, entering a wooded area. 12:24 p.m., Charlie Kirk is taken to an SUV and rushed to Timpanogos Regional Hospital. 12:25 p.m., George Zinn shouts, I shot him, now shoot me," while waving his hat in the air, and is put in handcuffs by police on scene and taken away. 12:29 p.m., via TMZ footage of a person running through a backyard resembling the suspect behind 847 800 West Street. It's unconfirmed whether or not this is the shooter. However, it seems to be accurate because of the route that the shooter took to enter UVU campus. Now, this is new footage from 12:44 p.m. showing Tyler Robinson's gray Dodge Challenger arriving at a parking lot about 1 mile away from UVU. 12:52 p.m., George Zinn, the decoy or patsy, is announced as the suspect in custody by the Utah police. 2:40 p.m., Trump announces Charlie Kirk has passed away on Truth Social. 4:21 p.m., Kash Patel tweets that the suspect is now in custody. 5:30 p.m., Governor Cox stated 12 minutes into a press conference that the suspect was wearing all dark clothing and a person of interest was being questioned. 5:59 p.m., Kash Patel tweets that the suspect in custody has been released and that the investigation continues, and this is essentially confirming that the text messages between Tyler and Lance start after 6 p.m. Now, 6:38 p.m., we have that photo of Tyler Robinson at a Dairy Queen wearing a maroon shirt, dark pants, black hat, glasses, and white shoes. This is approximately 15 to 17 minutes away from UVU, and there's been claims that this photo was taken 17 minutes after the shooting, which is just completely inaccurate. Continuing on with the text messages Tyler Robinson sent to Lance Twiggs. So the time here is unspecified, however, we can gauge that they start after 6 p.m. on September 10th. Robinson's roommate received a text message from Robinson which said, "Drop what you are doing, look under my keyboard." Now, the roommate found a note that stated, "I had the opportunity to take out Charlie Kirk, and I'm going to take it. Please find a photograph of this note." And after reading the note, the roommate responded, "What? You're joking, right?" Tyler says, "I am still okay, my love, but am stuck in Orem for a little while longer yet. Shouldn't be long until I can come home, but I gotta grab my rifle still. To be honest, I had hoped to keep this secret till I died of old age. I'm sorry to involve you." The roommate replies, "You weren't the one who did it, right?" He says, "I am. I'm sorry. I thought they caught the person." Then he says, "No, they grabbed some crazy old dude, then interrogated someone in similar clothing." Now, this gives us an accurate representation of when these text messages took place. I had planned to grab my rifle from my drop point shortly after, but most of that side of town got locked down. It's quiet, almost enough to get out, but there's one vehicle lingering. Why? Why did I do it? Yeah, I've had enough of his hatred. Some hate can't be negotiated out. If I am able to grab my rifle unseen, I will have left no evidence. Going to attempt to retrieve it again. Hopefully they have moved on. I haven't seen anything about them finding it. How long have you been planning this? A bit over a week, I believe. I can get close to it, but there is a squad car parked right by it. I think they have already swept that spot, but I don't want to chance it. Robinson says, "I'm wishing I had circled back and grabbed it as soon as I got to my vehicle. I'm worried what my old man would do if I didn't bring back Grandpa's rifle. I don't even know if it had a serial number, but it wouldn't trace to me. I worry about prints. I had to leave it in a bush where I changed outfits. Didn't have the ability or time to bring it with. I might have to abandon it and hope they don't find prints. How the fuck will I explain losing it to my old man? Only thing I left was the rifle wrapped in a towel. Remember how I was engraving bullets? The fucking messages are mostly a big meme. If I see notices bulge on Fox News, I might have a stroke. Alright, I'm gonna have to leave it. That really fucking sucks." Judging from today, I'd say Grandpa's gun does just fine. I don't know. I think it was a $2,000 scope. Then, a nice little time jump to September 11th. Robinson says, "Delete this exchange. My dad wants a photo of the rifle. He says Grandpa wants to know who has what. The feds released a photo of the rifle, and it's very unique. He's calling me right now, not answering." Robinson says, "Since Trump got into office, my dad has been pretty diehard MAGA." Then he says, "I'm going to turn myself in willingly. One of my neighbors here is a deputy for the sheriff. You are all I worry about, love." Then his roommate replies, "I'm much more worried about you." And he says, "Don't talk to the media, please. Don't take any interviews or make any comments. If any police ask you questions, ask for a lawyer and stay silent." All right, continuing on with the timeline on Thursday, September 11th. So at 7 a.m., this is the first FBI press conference where they confirm that they found the murder weapon in the woods. Then this is new footage from 7:17 a.m. on September 11th. Tyler Robinson arrives at a Maverick gas station in his gray Dodge Challenger, which is 212 miles away from UVU, en route to his home in Washington, Utah. Then at 9:21 a.m., the New York Post exclusively reveals the photo of the gun used in the shooting. 9:48 a.m., FBI Salt Lake City released the static image of the shooter walking up the staircase. 10:45 a.m., FBI announces a $100,000 reward for information leading to apprehension of the suspect. Now, all these claims are from the indictment itself, and we can presume that they take place between 11 a.m. and 7 p.m. So Robinson's mother noticed the suspected shooter on the news resembled her son. She called him to confirm his whereabouts during the shooting, and he said he was homesick from September 10th to September 11th. Robinson's father noticed the rifle described by police in the shooting resembled a rifle Tyler received as a gift, and he asked Tyler to send him a photo of the rifle and received no response. Robinson's father later spoke on the phone with him, and he implied his plan to take his own life. Now, Robinson's parents convinced him to meet at their home, and Robinson discusses the situation with his parents, then implies he was the shooter. He stated that he couldn't go to jail and wanted to end it, and when asked why he did it, Robinson explained that there's too much evil, and the guy, referring to Charlie Kirk, spreads too much hate. Robinson's parents brought up him turning himself in and got him to speak with a family friend, the retired deputy sheriff, and his parents and family friend convinced him to turn himself in. Now, Robinson was asked to bring any and all evidence to the sheriff's office to avoid police having to search his parents' home, but Robinson said he had disposed of all the clothes involved in different areas. Now, continuing on, at 7 p.m., we hear that locals began receiving text messages that Tyler Robinson was in custody, and they were going to pick him up in Warner Valley, which is around 4 hours away from UVU campus. So, according to the official narrative, it was 33 hours after the shooting, which would put it at 9 p.m. that Tyler Robinson went to a Washington County Sheriff's Office with his parents and the family friend to turn himself in. So not sure what the correct timeline is there. 11 p.m., Lance Twiggs was brought in for questioning. Shortly thereafter, their apartment was essentially raided, and then Robinson's mother explained how Tyler had become more political over the past year or so, starting to lean on the left politically, becoming more pro-gay and trans rights oriented. She also explained how he began to date his roommate, a biological male who was transitioning genders, Lance Twiggs. Police interviewed Robinson's roommate, who provided messages from Robinson about the shooting.
Investigators interviewed that roommate, who stated that his roommate, referring to Robinson, made a joke on Discord. Investigators asked if he would show them the messages on Discord. He opened it and showed several messages to investigators and allowed investigators to take photos of the screen as each message was shown by Robinson's roommate. These photos consisted of various messages, including content of messages between the phone contact name Tyler with an emoji icon and Robinson's roommate's device. The content of these messages included messages affiliated with the contact Tyler, stating a need to retrieve a rifle from a drop point, leaving the rifle in a bush, messages related to visually watching the area where a rifle was left, and a message referring to having left the rifle wrapped in a towel. The messages also refer to engraving bullets and a mention of a scope and the rifle being unique. Messages from the contact Tyler also mentioned that he had changed outfits.
And moving on to Friday, September 12th. So in the early morning, Tyler and Lance's apartment is raided and devices are seized. Lance is released and dropped off at his parents' home. Then at 6 a.m., President Trump announces on Fox and Friends that with a higher degree of certainty, they have the suspect, referring to Tyler Robinson.
Any updates on the suspect?
Yeah. Can I always say, I think, just to protect us all, and so Fox doesn't get sued, and we all don't get sued, and everything else. But I think with a high degree of certainty, we have him in custody, right? In custody. Everyone did a great job. We worked with the local police, the governor. Everybody did a great job.
At 8 a.m., Governor Cox gives a press conference saying they have Tyler Robinson.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We got him. On the evening of September 11th, a family member of Tyler Robinson reached out to a family friend who contacted the Washington County Sheriff's Office with information that Robinson had confessed to them or implied that he had committed the incident. This information was relayed to the Utah County Sheriff's Office and scene investigators at Utah Valley University. This information was also conveyed to the FBI. Investigators reviewed additional video footage from UVU surveillance and identified Robinson arriving on UVU campus in a gray Dodge Challenger at approximately 8:29 a.m. on September 10th, in which he is observed on video in a plain maroon t-shirt, light-colored shorts, a black hat with a white logo, and light-colored shoes. When encountered in person by investigators in Washington County on September 12th, in the early morning hours, Robinson was observed in consistent clothing with those surveillance images.
All right, now we can move on to some of the evidence that was collected at the scene and analyzed. So there was a screwdriver found on the roof near the shooting position, along with foot and hand indents found on the roof and where the shooter dropped down. There was a bolt-action Mauser 98 rifle with a scope found wrapped in a towel within the wooden area northeast of campus, along with ammunition rounds of a 30-06 with several engravings. On the fired cartridge, it said, "Notices bulge, what's this?" Second cartridge said, "Hey, fascist, catch," with arrow symbols. The third cartridge said, "Oh, Bella Chow, Bella Chow, Bella Chow, Chow, Chow." And the fourth cartridge said, "If you read this, you are gay, LMAO." Now, regarding the evidence that was analyzed, the rifle, ammunition rounds, towel, screwdriver were all sent for forensic analysis, and DNA that's consistent with Robinson's was found on the trigger, other parts of the rifle, the fired cartridge casing, 2 of the 3 unfired cartridges, the towel, and the screwdriver. So it's a clear-cut case. Obviously, it was Tyler. Regarding some of the narrative changes or issues, the FBI footage of the shooter on the roof. So FBI released footage of the shooter running across the roof and jumping down after the shot at 12:23, 30 seconds in, but cut the footage of the shot actually taking place, which was strange. Now, according to the original claim that he disassembled the gun on the roof and reassembled it before dropping it in the wooded area, and then it just wasn't discussed again, even though they found a screwdriver on the roof, which might suggest that he did actually disassemble and reassemble it. But footage contradicts this, as he's seen running immediately after taking the shot, which would indicate he didn't have enough time to disassemble the rifle again. Continuing on, footage of the shooter seconds before the shooting. So someone recorded the shooter on the roof at another spot on the UVU campus.
Right up.
Yeah. You think he'd already be in place?
You would think that. So there's somebody on the roof right there? Just saying?
Huh.
He just ran from over, where's my finger? Whoa. From over there, ran in. And now he's right there. Just saying.
And Candace Owens actually reached out to the individual who filmed the video, and they claim that the video was taken at 12:22 p.m., confirmed by Candace Owens via the video's metadata, which is 1 minute before Charlie Kirk was shot. Now, the shooter had just ran into position just before the video was recorded, which lines up with the claim that he was crouched on the roof from 12:17 to 12:22 p.m. This would give him enough time to perhaps assemble the rifle if it was disassembled and in his pants or backpack, then running across the roof, crouching down, and army crawling into position to take the shot. Now, according to the person who filmed the video, they said that the shooter they saw didn't match the description we were given of the shooter. They said he was dressed in tactical gear and wearing a face mask. Now, they are familiar with guns and train people on shooting, and they say that the rifle they saw was smaller than the proposed Mauser rifle. They heard the shot and claimed it didn't sound like a 30-06, but something smaller, like potentially a Hornady VMAX 223 round, which seems like a more accurate wound depiction than what we see in the footage of Charlie getting shot. We'll put an image comparison there for you. Another thing was the shooter changed clothes multiple times. So he appeared on footage at 8:07 a.m. heading towards campus wearing a maroon shirt, light shorts, etc., and then appeared on footage at 11:49 a.m. wearing a black shirt with an American flag, black hat, dark pants, white shoes, and glasses. He appeared on footage at 11:51 a.m. entering a parking garage stairwell wearing the same outfit. Then as he fled the scene, dropped the gun off, and in the text messages he even says that he changed outfits where he dropped the gun off. Then we see that picture of Tyler Robinson wearing the maroon shirt, dark pants, white shoes, black hat, and glasses at Dairy Queen at 6:38 p.m., and supposedly he was wearing the same outfit when he turned himself in around 7 p.m. the next day. Now, just strange that he wouldn't shower or change clothes within 33 hours after he just murdered someone. You'd think someone would change clothes. Just my opinion. I don't know. Now, regarding the text messages, it's strange that he discusses every single detail, including the motive, alibi, and confession. and it's weirdly written and inconsistent with a 22-year-old's language. He refers to his father as my old man multiple times. He calls a car a vehicle and a police car a squad car. And then he says he changed outfits, which is something a female might say, although he just literally removed his shirt as opposed to changing outfits. And then another thing is the autopsy. So there's claims that there was no autopsy via this dispatch audio, but online there were claims that an autopsy was done by Andrew Colvett on X, and that it was found that Charlie's bones had stopped the bullet. And it's mandated in Utah for homicide investigations to perform an autopsy. So keep that in mind. Let's continue here. We'll look at this tweet by Andrew Colvett where he made that claim. I want to address some of the discussion about the lack of an exit wound with Charlie. I'm usually not interested in delving into most of this kind of online chatter, and I apologize, this is somewhat graphic, but in this case, the fact that there wasn't an exit wound is probably another miracle, and I want people to know. I just spoke with the surgeon who worked on Charlie in the hospital. He said the bullet absolutely should have gone through, which is very normal for a high-power, high-velocity round. I've seen wounds from this caliber many times, and they always just go through everything. This would have taken a moose or two down, an elk, etc., but it didn't go through. Charlie's body stopped it. Then he said, I mentioned to his doctor that there were dozens of staff, students, and special guests standing directly behind Charlie on the other side of the tent, and he replied, it was an absolute miracle that someone else didn't get killed. His bone was so healthy, and the density was so impressive that he's like the man of steel. It should have gone through and through. It likely would have killed those standing behind him, too. In the end, the coroner did find the bullet just beneath the skin. Even in death, Charlie managed to save the lives of those around him. Remarkable. Miraculous. You know what's remarkable and miraculous? This dispatch audio that claims he didn't go in for an autopsy, and essentially his death certificate was signed by the doctor at the hospital.
So I did do the request. They emailed me back. He did not go in for an autopsy. The death certificate was signed by the doctor at the hospital.
Oh, okay. Can you just do a field clip documenting that?
I'm sorry, 10-9?
Can you just add a step to the case documenting that there was no autopsy?
287, I'll be clear to the hospital.
I need an officer at Timpanogos Hospital to come stage in the emergency room bay.
Jesse just told me that he just got off the phone and Charlie's wife is coming to signature and to bring in a car over here for arraignment.
Charlie's wife is coming to land at signature, you said?
Sir, and Jesse's going to go to Duncan right now and pick up a car for her.
Okay, I'm a little confused because that's what Corey just said. They said they're landing at Duncan, so I don't know where they're landing, but we will just kind of play it by ear, I guess, best that we can.
That's remarkable and miraculous to me. All right, now we can move on to some extra information regarding George Zinn specifically. He was taken into custody after claiming he was the shooter, then taken to a hospital for chest pains, and at the hospital he told the officer that he was glad he said he shot the individual, referring to Charlie Kirk, so the real suspect could get away. He later told FBI investigators that he uses his phone to look at child sexual abuse material after initially refusing to allow police to go through his phone. Tells you a lot about this guy. He also made headlines in 2013 after he was charged with making a threat of terrorism, which is a second-degree felony, in relation to an email asking if Salt Lake City Marathon organizers needed anybody to help place bombs near the finish line. He was also supposedly an eyewitness during 9/11.
We see that plane go in, and we just think, wow, and then I think it was, a 9/12 or something like that, that second plane hit that tower. Immediately chaos in that hotel lobby there.
And he went on a podcast, Strokes and Folks, in 2023 titled Season 4, Episode 1, Special Edition Interview with George Zinn, Utah's most famous political celebrity. Now, moving on to something regarding Tyler Robinson, specifically the rifle drop point. So, the rifle was dropped in the wooded area behind 683 West 925 South Street in Orem, Utah. Now, people have looked into the owner of that property, and it's 683 Properties LLC, and they supposedly have found a connection to Palantir Technologies and Tesla. This claim is just incorrect. The entity in question is actually 683 Capital Management LLC, which is not the same as 683 Properties LLC. So 683 Capital Management LLC is a SEC registered investment advisor formed in May 2006, and it operates as a hedge fund and asset manager. Now the address associated is actually 1700 Broadway, New York, and this entity's investments are a majority Palantir and Tesla stock, which is where the confusion originates. There's just really nothing here. Another thing I've seen is the house next door is 691 West 925 South Street in Orem, Utah, and people have claimed that it's suspicious that the Utah Valley University actually owns this house, which they do since 2020, according to Utah County land reports. And people have made claims that maybe Tyler Robinson dropped the rifle at the house and fled the scene while the real shooter posted up in the vacant home, 691 West 925 South Street, because it's owned by Utah Valley University. It's just a theory with no evidence supporting it, though, so there's also nothing here. Ian Carroll on YouTube did a very nice video where he went to the UVU campus. He retraced the route, analyzed the scene, discussed some conspiracy theories circulating online. It's a great video if you want to watch that. The link is right there. And then Peak Prosperity on YouTube also made 2 awesome videos covering an in-depth analysis of the shot angle, pictures of Tyler, theories, etc. Very great videos. I recommend them. All right, now we can move on to some questions and concerns. So my first question here is, why is he limping in the footage at 11:49 a.m.? So the claim here is that the rifle is in his pants as he's walking onto campus, explaining the limp. And my rebuttal to that would simply be that the rifle is just too large to fit in his pants or backpack while walking through campus. The rifle is 43 to 45 inches fully intact, including the barrel, stock, and scope together. Separated, the rifle barrel is 23 to 25 inches, the rifle stock is 28 to 30 inches, and the scope is 10 to 14 inches. I suppose it's possible he had the barrel end of the rifle tucked in his pants, cut off at the knee, so his knee could bend as we see it bending, and the stock end of the rifle under his shirt on his back side. However, we should see the rifle bulging out of his pants, which we don't. I suppose it's more likely he had the rifle either completely or partially disassembled with the largest pieces in his pants and beneath his shirt on his back side, which would be covered by his backpack. Moving on to the next question. How did he fit it in his backpack or pants? So there's the claim that it's either a folding rifle or that it was disassembled, but it's rebutted by the photo released via the New York Post, which proves that it has a fixed stock requiring disassembly. So even if it was disassembled, it wouldn't fit in his backpack or pants regarding the walk to campus and the drop off the roof. It's highly unlikely to have the stock and barrel in your pants shifting around as you're walking 15 to 20 minutes to your shooting position. Next question, how did the rifle get on the roof? So the claim that he had the rifle in his pants or backpack and it was easily concealed, the rebuttal here would just be that the rifle wouldn't fit in his pants or backpack, even if it was disassembled. Rebuttal 2, he wouldn't be able to get to the shooting position unnoticed with it in his pants if it did fit. Moving on. How did he reassemble the rifle before leaving it in the woods? So the original claim was that he assembled the rifle before the shot, then disassembled the rifle on the roof after the shot, left a screwdriver on scene, then somehow reassembled the rifle before leaving it in the woods. Now, rebuttal 1. Most of these rifles require 2 tools, an Allen wrench and a spanner wrench, and then a third tool, in most cases, a gunsmith screwdriver is also used. So unless he had 2 of these screwdrivers, it wouldn't be accurate to say that he disassembled it after the shot and reassembled it after dropping off the roof and leaving it in the woods. Now, rebuttal 2, the fastest I've seen anyone disassemble a Mauser rifle online is around 50 seconds, which is impossible considering the FBI footage of him running at 12:23 30 seconds, which is seconds after Kirk is shot, not to mention the adrenaline dump of him just murdering someone, making these intricate movements even harder to do on the spot. Rebuttal 3, video footage of the shooter on the roof after the shot clearly shows him running immediately after taking the shot. FBI footage of the shooter on the roof confirms this as well. So I'd say the most likely situation is that he assembled it on the roof, left a screwdriver after the assembly, didn't disassemble it after the shot, and had a fully intact rifle as he jumped off the roof to leave it in the woods. There's a bunch of people who have covered the footage and explained where you can see the rifle in the footage, and the footage isn't even filming at 30 frames per second, so it's likely not visible the whole time in the footage. Now, moving on to the next question. If he didn't disassemble the rifle after the shot, where is the fully assembled rifle in the footage of him dropping down from the roof? So the claim that the rifle is in his pants or in his hands and wrapped in a towel as he drops down from the roof. The first rebuttal, it's unclear whether the item in his hand is large enough to be a rifle. It's definitely not in his pants, as his knees both bend dramatically when he hits the floor. Rebuttal 2, you can see what could be a fully intact rifle in some frames. However, you also see what appears to be smaller than a rifle in others, so it's just unclear. Next question is, how did he execute this assassination with no prior training? The claim here, he had little gun experience and didn't even attend Utah Valley University. He attended Utah State University, which is an entirely different college. So the rebuttal here would be somehow he knew exactly where to go to take the shot, escape undetected, and then decides to confess everything via text directly after the assassination, literally hours after. Just super strange. And then another thing, why are there no timestamps in the text messages? So the claim that the messages were sent from Tyler to Lance Twiggs, my rebuttal here would just be that the messages seem fabricated. Tyler spelled out his entire motive and confession to the crime in great detail. The messages also don't accurately represent the language used by a 22-year-old, suggesting possible fabrication and cover-up. All right, now we can move on to some of the theories that are circulating online, starting with the hologram faked death theory, which is just implausible and baseless. There's no physical or testimonial evidence to suggest this. It's solely on unsubstantiated claims. The fatal gunshot wound in multiple videos is from multiple angles. AI just isn't that good yet. Moving on to the trapdoor theory. It's false and implausible. So there's no physical or testimonial evidence to suggest this either. Unsubstantiated claims. Kirk was shot from above, not below, and people immediately start looking up and pointing at the shooter from behind towards the Losi Center building, not below Charlie. Moving on to the next theory. The hand signals. Extremely unlikely. So the theory is that one or multiple of Charlie's security were making hand signals right before Charlie was shot, possibly signaling the shooter to take shot. And I've seen people say or make claims that his security was Israeli security during this event. Not sure whether or not that's true, but just thought I might mention it. That is interesting if that is the case. But the rebuttal here would just be that hand signals are common for security to communicate, and timing does not prove causation. They were also making hand signals minutes before he was shot, and he wasn't shot at that point. So what do you make of that? Simple. The other theory about the mic explosion is just false, and it's been debunked. There's a vector analysis where energy emitted from the mic exploding into Charlie's neck.
Charlie Kirk's white t-shirt up through his neck and created the exit wound that we told you was an exit wound immediately when we saw that exit wound. First we had exploding pagers, now we have exploding mics. Do you remember the vector analysis from John Bray? That proves that all of the activity came from the mic that Charlie Kirk was wearing. Remember the palm gun guy in the brown shirt, that shadowy looking guy with the sunglasses? Yeah, he pushes the detonator. Clear as day.
People also claim it was either his shirt attached mic or his lapel hand mic that exploded, so they're not really sure, which kind of, adds to how this theory kind of loses its weight right after you start asking questions. The rebuttal here would just be that the wound was clearly from a firearm, not an explosion. The mic is also seen still intact after the shot, which suggests otherwise. The mic movement in the analysis is also consistent with sonic shock or vibrations from a gunshot, not an explosion. Moving to the next one, the alternate shooter position theory. So this one's unlikely. Peak Prosperity on YouTube did a great analysis of the shooting, suggesting possibly that a shooter from a different position took the shot and the rooftop to the left of Charlie rather than the Losi Center rooftop. Now the rebuttal here, Peak Prosperity did an excellent job explaining his reasoning, and I won't refute that video today. Other theories claim that the shooter was to the right of Charlie, either on the roof, the balcony, in the window, or from the crowd. Now, rebuttal to these other theories are all just based on opinionated nonsense that has no basis in reality, like a muzzle flash from a window, or a small movement from a security guard, a tiny blip on the roof that appears to be a person but has been proven to be an object on the roof. It's just all from people that don't know what they're talking about. Continuing on, Tyler being framed or manipulated via some MK Ultra or blackmail scheme. Possible. Now, the official narrative has inconsistencies like the gun disassembly, timing gaps, the screwdriver on the roof. Even Alex Jones has claimed that Tyler Robinson attended a CIA-related program at USU called the CAI, the Center for Anticipatory Intelligence, and would likely be recruited by the CIA because of his good grades and whatnot. Now, the rebuttal here would just be that there's no sources so far that can confirm that Tyler attended this. He did attend USU in fall of 2021, but according to USU, he was not involved with CAI at all. Alex Jones has been ahead of the curve with some cases, but so far there's just no information to verify this claim. Now, continuing on to our conclusion. So after compiling every piece of evidence from surveillance inconsistencies, timeline gaps, questionable motive explanations to the ever-changing official narrative, one thing is clear, that we are not being told the full story. Tyler Robinson may be the one on trial, but it's the truth itself that is under investigation here. The footage was cut, the timeline shifted, details were altered, and yet the public is expected to accept the conclusions without question. From the disassembly claims to missing footage and conflicting eyewitness accounts, we're left with far more questions than answers. Whether it was a lone actor, a manipulated pawn, or something far more coordinated, it remains to be seen. But we do know that Charlie Kirk was a rising figure, asking the right questions, pushing the wrong buttons, and waking up an entire generation. That alone makes this story worth paying attention to. I'm not here to tell you what to believe, I'm here to show you what they don't want you to see. So stay sharp, stay aware, and most importantly, ask why, because if you don't, they'll keep getting away with it. As Ian Carroll says, ask all the questions and question all the answers. Peace out.